this is Roger, thanks for dropping by, and I'm talking quietly because it's 6 o'clock in the flipping morning. The cat woke me up. Anyway, on this subject of fertilizers, I think everybody, including me, needs to take a deep breath and a step backwards and reassess their orchid world, because I've just had a comment from Wade, who I deeply respect. I've seen his plants. When somebody grows plants that good, you take note, basically. And the advice he's given me, because he uses exactly the same fertilizer and his water has an incredibly low TDS reading to start with, so he's virtually in the same boat as me, and the levels he's using with obvious success. Yeah, pause for thought. Obvious success make far more sense to me too. The readings I was getting with all the confusion of the different measuring units and stuff like that frightened me for a start, and although the information I was getting was offered with great help and everything and was greatly appreciated, combining that with some information I got from my youngest son, who's seriously studied chemistry. I was chatting to my daughter about orchids and the fuss I've been having with this fertilizer, and can I borrow her scales to measure this known amount. He sort of sat up, his ears pricked up, and he said, "You're doing what?" And I restated the sort of TDS levels that I was thinking of using, and he paused and he stopped and he said, "Hang on just a minute, I just want to double check something." Tapped away on the phone like youngsters do, and magic comes out on the screen. Mind you, I suppose I do the same thing on my computer, but I just need a big screen. I'm not into these little tiny ones. Anyway, he came back and he said, out in the world where water lives, nothing to do with growing plants in confined spaces, but out there where water is, like in rivers and streams and the sea and estuaries and stuff like that, he said, with the general scale that most TDS meters use, a TDS reading above 500 is called brackish water. It's the sort of water you get in tidal estuaries. Yeah? It's got salt in it, and it's called brackish water for a reason. If you follow a river down, all the grass and the reeds grow right up to the edge of the water and even into the water. As soon as you reach the tidal point, nothing grows up to the high tide mark, because it's got brackish water, and normal plants cannot live at those levels of salts. Another pause for thought. That's the real world. That's where the plants grow. So he said, if you're using stuff that over a reading of 500 TDS, the chances are your plants are going to stop growing. So standing back, deep breath, have a look at Wade's comment on my recent video and look at the levels he's using. And they're way below what I was luckily intending to use and have only used in reality once. So no damage done. I've watered my orchids at one high level, and okay, if they didn't use that fertilizer, they're going to get flushed anyway. There's no big deal, no damage done. I didn't use the high level on the mounts, so hopefully no burnt roots, and I think a one-off feed wouldn't burn roots anyway. It's a cumulative effect. But anyway, I'm going to go back to levels that I'm happy with, that also agree with quite a few orchid growers around my orchid societies at the sort of levels they use, and I'm happy with that. So all this business of having to measure a known amount and mix it with a bloody US gallon and all that sort of stuff, it's all gone out of the window. I will just use the stock solution I've already mixed up, which has a high enough quantity of the MSU fertilizer to negate the effect of the different size granules and all that cobblers. Forget all that. I've just got a really strong stock solution, and how strong it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that when I mix it with my RO water, I take a TDS reading And as long as it's around a value that I think is sensible for my orchids, which I suppose I ought to say, didn't I? Wade recommended somewhere around a TDS reading of 350 to 400 for actively growing plants. If he wants a higher level feed than that, he uses a slow release fertilizer in his pots. Obviously you can't do that with mounts, but most mounts are not normally high feeders. You know, you're looking in the cymbidiums, catasetums, and so you don't normally mount those sorts of plants, so that would be under control. Makes sense. And then for, you know, for my Masdevallias, Restrepias, and the really low feeders who really do not like a high level of feed in their pot, their roots are too sensitive, then I'll go down to much lower levels. And quite honestly, I'll probably stick with the levels I've been using, which for those plants is a TDS reading of about 100, 120. They don't need much food. They really don't. Miltonias are in the same category for me. That's how I treat my Miltonias. And I know I've just said Miltonias, haven't I? I've only had one coffee. You know I mean Miltoniopsis. When I say Miltonia, talking about really sensitive plants, I'm saying it wrong. I mean Miltoniopsis, the fussy ones. Okay, so let's all take a deep breath. Go and have a look at Olivia's video that she's just done, the Waterculture channel, OME I think it is, and she's just done a very concise, very informative video on feeding, very relevant to waterculture. But quite honestly, it's relevant to all orchids. But if you've got an orchid in pure water, or nothing for some of the time, as the waterculture process means, your roots are in a worse position to suffer if you get it wrong, you know, because they're bare rooted. They're always bare rooted, and some of the time they're standing in water for a length of time, and if that water's got a level of feed that's too high, you are going to damage your plant. So go and have a look at her video. It's really good. It's nice and concise, no technical science, no rubbish like all that. It's just simple English advice on, you know, watering your orchids, specifically aimed at waterculture, which would probably apply to semi-waterculture as well, but you know I don't do all that. And I found it relevant to me, even though I've either got mounted orchids or potted orchids and don't go in for that sort of thing. It was still relevant. So let's not all get fussed and confused and worried. Just look at the TDS values that Wade has given me, which I will now adopt, backed up by many good growers at my orchid societies. I'd already got that advice. Why the hell I thought I should take a different set of figures and a different set of advice that were more than double what everybody else was doing. You know, confusion with the differing units and this, that. I've just had a blinking brain fail on the whole thing, and I've had enough. It's got beyond a joke. So I'm stepping back and going back to levels given advice from good growers from two parts of the world, UK and the States, actually, and from Australia, come to think of it. Cheers, Michael. And I'm sticking to those levels, so, you know, I'm not using a TDS reading that ever goes higher than, say, 400. 450 absolute max for the Vandas. That's it. I'm not going any higher than that. And I know some people at my orchid societies would say that's too strong. Yeah? So err on the side of caution. Overfeeding does damage. Underfeeding, quite honestly, a lot of your orchids you'd not notice the difference. Yeah? If you're trying to build up a large specimen plant, show quality stuff, then this is important to you. If your orchids are growing fine and producing blooms and you're happy, then whatever you're doing is obviously working. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay? Now, sorry I haven't been posting, but it's been a big weekend. My eldest son has just opened his new business. He runs a fitness centre, and he's just got a dedicated unit, all kitted out, and, you know, all nice shiny new paint. Luckily it didn't stink of paint because I hate that smell. But it was his open day on Saturday, so the whole family came down, went to the open day, had a glass of bubbly, and to celebrate a new business starting out. So well pleased with that. That also means my youngest son is with me for most of the weekend. He had to get his car MOT'd, so he's transportless at the moment, so he's stopping with me, and so's my daughter. So it's been a family type weekend. So the Orchids have taken second place basically. I got a travel day today, Monday. I think it's Monday. Yeah, it probably is. I'll let you know when the sun comes up. And yeah, I'll be back to normal tomorrow. Where I can just get back to doing normal stuff and not worry other people and take the worries away from me. It's just got to the point where I've had enough. And I'm sure some others have too. Yeah. So let's get back to some sort of normality, And if it works, just do it. Yeah. Don't worry, don't panic. It's just plants at the end of the day. Right, another coffee for me, and I'll get this posted, and yeah, we'll go on from there, knowing that the steps forward are not going to drop me in the mud, and anybody else who followed me. That would be a silly thing to do, wouldn't it? Watch somebody fall in the mud and then tread in the same footsteps. Yeah? Food for thought. Always double check your information and get some backup from somewhere. Don't just believe what one individual says. I've always said this is what I do or what I'm going to do, and that is the fail-safe in my opinion on YouTube. It means that person is doing this thing. It doesn't mean you've got to do it. Okay, so this video is really to just set it straight that from this point forward, my TDS meter is just not going up that high. And as a consequence, I can go back to not worrying about pH, because at those levels, the pH on that fertilizer with my RO water is absolutely fine. All worries gone. Just go back to growing the orchids nicely and getting some reasonable results. I'll live with that. See you next time.